Welcome, beautiful Sigma ladies. Silence becomes dangerous the moment it stops obeying the crowd. That line perfectly sums up why Sigma females never survive peacefully in weak circles. They don't obey, they don't perform, and they don't bend themselves into emotional pretzels just to keep fragile egos comfortable. And according to group psychology research, it only takes one independent thinker to make an entire insecure circle feel threatened enough to turn on them. One. Not a committee, not chaos. Just one woman who refuses to shrink. The Sigma female is that one. While everyone else is busy adjusting their personalities like a ringtone, changing it depending on who's nearby, she stays the same. She stays consistent. She stays honest. And ironically, that's exactly what paints the target on her back. Weak circles don't want truth, stability, or authenticity. They want obedience dressed as harmony. And the Sigma female, she doesn't do obedience. In fact, she doesn't even know where that button is supposed to be. Her calm presence exposes their insecurities. Her boundaries confuse their illusions, and her independence disrupts the entire ecosystem of emotional dependence they've carefully built. Suddenly, the quiet one becomes the problem, even though she's the only one minding her business and drinking water, which apparently is suspicious behavior now. Weak circles will always pick the Sigma female as the scapegoat, not because she causes chaos, but because she refuses to participate in theirs. And that's exactly where the story begins. Number 1. Her emotional discipline looks like arrogance to those who lose control easily. People who struggle with their emotions often misunderstand those who have mastered theirs, and Sigma females experience this misunderstanding more than most. When a Sigma woman stays calm during tension, disagreement, or drama, people who rely on emotional explosions to get attention feel threatened. They expect everyone to match their intensity, react to their triggers, or get pulled into their spiral. But the Sigma female doesn't play that game. She stays composed, grounded, and steady, and that quiet control exposes just how chaotic other people truly are. To someone who lacks inner stability, her calmness feels like a personal attack. Instead of seeing her composure as strength, they interpret it as superiority. They think she's acting like she's too good, too wise, or too unbothered, when in reality she's simply protecting her peace. Emotional discipline isn't arrogance, it's self-respect. But weak circles flip it into an insult because it highlights what they don't have. When other people start yelling, she doesn't raise her voice. When they try to provoke her, she doesn't take the bait. When manipulation enters the room, she shuts it down with silence. And the people who depend on emotional chaos to maintain control can't stand that. They want reactions, not responsibility. They want noise, not clarity. They want someone to blame for their instability. And the Sigma woman becomes the easiest target because she refuses to match their dysfunction. In weak circles, whoever stays calm becomes the outsider. Her emotional discipline breaks the unspoken rule that everyone must lose control together. She won't chase drama, argue endlessly, or join a pity fest, and since they can't drag her into their emotional mess, they accuse her of thinking she's above them. In reality, she's simply not ruled by the same storm they live in. The irony is that the very thing they label as arrogance is the reason she succeeds in life. Her emotional control lets her think clearly, choose wisely, and walk away when needed. Meanwhile, the ones calling her arrogant are usually the same people who lose control over things that don't even matter. Her discipline isn't the problem. Their lack of it is. Number 2. She's accused of intentions she never had because they project their own onto her. One of the biggest reasons Sigma females become scapegoats in weak circles is simple. People project their own intentions, insecurities, and hidden motives onto her. She moves quietly, speaks honestly, and doesn't carry hidden agendas, and that alone invites suspicion from people who always have one. Weak individuals assume everyone thinks the way they do, so when they see her acting differently, they don't understand it. Instead of trying to learn from her, they fill in the gaps with their own fears and call it the truth. A Sigma female might be minding her business, but insecure people will twist that into, "She thinks she's better than us." She might offer a straightforward opinion, but they'll turn it into, "She's attacking me." She might walk away from drama, and it becomes, "She must be hiding something." Everything she does becomes a canvas for their inner chaos. They can't comprehend people who don't operate on manipulation, jealousy, or validation hunting, so they assume she's doing those things secretly. Projection is how weak circles survive. Instead of facing their flaws, they throw them onto someone who has nothing to do with their mess. They accuse her of being cold because they can't handle honesty. They accuse her of being controlling because they fear losing control. They accuse her of being untrustworthy because they can't be trusted. In other words, the Sigma woman becomes a mirror that reflects truths they don't want to confront. And when people can't handle their own reflection, they attack the mirror. This is why Sigma females often get blindsided by accusations that make zero sense. She could be the calmest, most neutral person in the room, yet somehow she becomes the reason for someone else's meltdown. Her neutrality triggers their insecurity, and instead of managing their emotions, they rewrite her intentions to justify their behavior. It's unfair, confusing, and exhausting, but it's also predictable. The Sigma female's clarity highlights their chaos. Her neutrality exposes their emotional immaturity, and her honesty reveals their manipulation without her even trying. So they label her with their own flaws and call it truth. But it was never about her. It was always about them. Number 3. Her presence threatens the group's comfort with mediocrity. Sigma females have a way of existing that makes the people around them uncomfortable, not because they try to, but simply because they refuse to conform. Weak circles thrive on mediocrity. They settle for the easy path, the unchallenging routine, and the low standards that keep everyone safe from effort, accountability, or growth. When a Sigma female enters the picture, she doesn't ask for permission, she doesn't follow the herd, and she doesn't lower her standards to make others feel better. That alone destabilizes the delicate comfort that mediocrity provides. Her work ethic, her clarity, her confidence, and her refusal to accept subpar behavior are like a spotlight shining on everyone else's weaknesses. People who have grown comfortable with half-effort, excuses, and minimal commitment suddenly feel exposed. It doesn't matter if she's quiet or loud, involved or indifferent. Her very presence shows that there is a higher bar, one they are failing to meet. Weak circles can't tolerate that because it forces them to confront something they've been avoiding, their own inadequacy. Instead of raising themselves to match her level, they often attack her. The easiest way to preserve mediocrity is to turn the one who threatens it into the villain. By scapegoating her, they can convince themselves that she's the problem, that she's arrogant, or that she doesn't belong. This lets them maintain the illusion that their comfortable mediocrity is somehow normal or acceptable, when in reality it's being silently challenged with every interaction. The Sigma female isn't even trying to provoke them. She's not trying to show off or compete. She's simply being consistent, disciplined, and true to herself. But that consistency highlights the cracks in everyone else's foundation, and weak circles cannot handle exposure without backlash. They would rather create a scapegoat than face the uncomfortable truth that they are capable of more, yet refuse to reach for it. Her presence is a mirror they don't want to look into, and so they lash out. The irony is that the very qualities that make her a target are the ones that guarantee her success and self-respect. She isn't the problem. They are. Number 4. She holds people accountable without theatrics, which terrifies the irresponsible Sigma females have a quiet power that weak circles can't handle. The ability to hold people accountable without turning it into a scene. Most people in insecure groups rely on drama, guilt-tripping, or exaggerated emotion to maintain control. They thrive on chaos and confusion because it distracts from their incompetence or laziness. The Sigma female doesn't play those games. She states facts, points out inconsistencies, or addresses behavior calmly and directly. There's no shouting, no exaggerated reactions, no manipulative undertones, just clarity. And that terrifies those who are used to operating without consequences. In weak circles, accountability is often seen as a threat because it forces people to face the truth about themselves. The Sigma female doesn't dramatize her point or try to shame anyone. She simply makes her expectations clear and follows through with boundaries. That type of disciplined confrontation is unfamiliar and uncomfortable for people who are used to getting away with excuses and half-hearted efforts. They panic because they cannot manipulate her with emotional theatrics. Her calm, consistent approach exposes their irresponsibility in the most undeniable way. Because she refuses to engage in manipulation, they often paint her as harsh or overbearing. They twist her integrity into aggression, her clarity into criticism, and her standards into personal attacks. Weak individuals feel threatened not by her words, but by the fact that she cannot be intimidated or swayed by their usual tactics. She doesn't need to fight or argue. Her mere commitment to truth and consistency is enough to unsettle them. Ironically, the same quality that makes her a target is the one that makes her unstoppable in life. Holding people accountable without theatrics shows strength, intelligence, and composure. It's a subtle dominance that weak circles cannot process, so they scapegoat her instead of stepping up themselves. Her accountability doesn't create enemies, it exposes them. And weak circles, incapable of handling the reflection, make her the villain because it's easier than confronting their own failures. Number 5. Her detachment removes the group's ability to manipulate her emotionally. One of the most unsettling qualities a Sigma female has in a weak circle is her detachment. She doesn't need constant validation, she doesn't crave approval, and she doesn't react predictably to emotional pressure. For groups built on insecurity, dependency, and manipulation, this is nothing short of a disaster. They operate on the unspoken rule that everyone can be influenced, guilt-tripped, or swayed through emotional play. The Sigma female ignores the rulebook entirely. Her detachment is a shield that leaves manipulators powerless, and powerlessness breeds fear. And fear quickly turns into scapegoating. Her emotional independence confounds people who are used to controlling others to feel secure. They rely on reactions, on predictable responses, on emotional leverage. She doesn't give them that. If they try to provoke her, she remains composed. If they attempt guilt, she simply moves forward. If they spin rumors to manipulate her, she doesn't engage. Her emotional armor exposes the fragility of the people around her. What's terrifying for weak circles is that she's not even trying to dominate or disrupt. She's simply living according to her own rules. Because they can't manipulate her, weak circles have no choice but to create narratives that place her at fault. They twist her neutrality into coldness, her calm into arrogance, and her independence into a personal attack. Anything she does or doesn't do becomes evidence of wrongdoing in their eyes. They label her as difficult or unapproachable because it's easier to attack her than to accept that their usual strategies have no effect. The irony is that her detachment is also her greatest strength. By refusing to participate in emotional manipulation, she maintains clarity, focus, and freedom that others can't access. Her calm, unshakable presence forces people to confront their own dependency and immaturity, and most can't handle that. So instead of reflecting on their shortcomings, they project blame onto her, making her the scapegoat for a system they themselves built. Her detachment doesn't isolate her, it empowers her, and weak circles, unable to wield their usual influence, resent her for it. Number 6. She's the only one who can walk away, and that power makes her a threat. Sigma females carry a power most people in weak circles can't comprehend: the absolute ability to walk away. She doesn't cling to approval, she doesn't beg for inclusion, and she doesn't fear exclusion. This freedom is terrifying for people who have built their lives around dependence, validation, and control. Weak circles rely on everyone staying within the invisible web of emotional leverage. They thrive on keeping people invested, scared, or attached. The Sigma female isn't tethered by any of it. Her independence exposes just how fragile their control truly is, and nothing makes them panic faster than someone who cannot be controlled. The threat she poses isn't loud or dramatic, it's quiet, steady, and invisible until it hits. She doesn't need the group to feel whole, to feel worthy, or to feel powerful. She doesn't negotiate her peace for acceptance or comfort. She simply exists on her own terms. That possibility that she could leave at any moment without hesitation makes weak circles uneasy, because it forces them to acknowledge that the group's cohesion is an illusion. Their power, their influence, their manipulations are only effective as long as she stays. And since she holds all the cards, they target her to neutralize the threat before she exercises her freedom. In weak circles, the one who can walk away becomes the scapegoat precisely because leaving would expose the emptiness everyone else relies on. They accuse her of being cold, detached, or selfish to justify their fear of her independence. Her ability to detach doesn't hurt the group, it highlights how dependent and unstable the group actually is. In other words, she isn't the problem, she's the unavoidable mirror of truth that they refuse to face. The Sigma female's power lies in her choices. She can engage, participate, or leave at will, and that freedom terrifies those who live in chains of insecurity. They attack her not because she has done anything wrong, but because her very existence challenges the safety of their mediocrity and manipulation. Her independence isn't a threat to her, it's a threat to them. And that is why she will always be the scapegoat in weak circles. Number 7. She notices the lies everyone agreed to pretend are true. Sigma females have an uncanny ability to see through the carefully constructed illusions that weak circles rely on. Most people in insecure groups operate on unspoken agreements to ignore the truth, to pretend everything is fine, and to smooth over cracks that might expose their own incompetence or insecurity. They rely on collective delusion to keep their fragile self-images intact. The Sigma female, however, doesn't participate in that charade. She notices the inconsistencies, the half-truths, the gossip dressed as fact, and the silent compromises that hold the group together. Her clarity is both alarming and threatening because it disrupts the comfortable fiction everyone else has agreed to uphold. She doesn't point out lies with theatrics or condescension. Often, she simply refuses to reinforce them. Her refusal to go along is enough to make weak circles uncomfortable. People who have built their social comfort on deception feel exposed in her presence. Her honesty and perceptiveness act like a mirror, reflecting not just the cracks in the system, but the cracks within themselves. They can't hide behind excuses or distractions because she sees straight through them, and that transparency is unbearable for those who thrive on manipulation and illusion. The weak circle's response is predictable. Instead of addressing their own dishonesty, they project blame onto her. She becomes difficult, overly critical, or disruptive, even though all she's doing is refusing to participate in the collective lie. Her awareness turns into a threat simply because it forces others to confront the uncomfortable reality they've been avoiding. They need someone to scapegoat so they can continue living in denial. Ironically, the Sigma female's ability to see the truth without being drawn into the drama is exactly what makes her powerful. While the group scrambles to maintain their illusions, she operates from clarity and independence, unshaken by the chaos around her. She doesn't create the problems, she simply refuses to validate them. That refusal, in the eyes of the weak circle, makes her the problem. Her honesty exposes them, and that is why she is always painted as the scapegoat. Number 8. Her calmness during chaos embarrasses the ones who feed on drama. Sigma females have a rare and unsettling ability. They remain calm when everyone else is losing their minds. In weak circles, drama isn't just entertainment, it's currency. It's how people assert control, gain attention, and feel powerful in a group that lacks real structure or competence. When a Sigma female walks into that environment and refuses to engage, the very foundation of their chaos is shaken. Her calmness doesn't just highlight her strength, it exposes their immaturity and dependence on emotional storms, making them look weak, irrational, and absurd. People who thrive on drama need reactions. They need chaos to feel alive, relevant, or in control. The Sigma female's serenity denies them that. She doesn't yell back, she doesn't panic, and she doesn't try to compete with their overblown emotional display. She moves with purpose, speaks when necessary, and otherwise maintains a composed presence that is impossible to manipulate. For people used to defining themselves through noise and emotional turbulence, her calmness is almost unbearable. It serves as a mirror that reflects everything they don't want to see about themselves, their overreactions, their insecurities, and their inability to manage even minor conflicts without turning them into a spectacle. Because weak circles cannot tolerate being exposed, they invent narratives to shift attention. Suddenly the Sigma female is labeled as cold, unfeeling, arrogant, or too serious. They attack her because her calmness makes them look foolish, and admitting that would force them to confront their own incompetence. The irony is that she is not doing anything to them directly. Her strength is passive, yet undeniable. The truth is that her calmness is her superpower. It allows her to see through manipulation, think clearly, and act strategically, while the rest are trapped in emotional chaos. It is impossible for weak circles to compete with or control that level of composure, so they scapegoat her to reclaim a sense of power they never truly had. Her serenity is not a flaw, it's a mirror exposing their fragility. And in their fear of being exposed, she becomes the enemy. Number 9. She communicates in a way the insecure can't decode. Sigma females have a communication style that weak circles simply cannot process. They speak directly, honestly, and without hidden agendas. There are no manipulations, no subtle traps, no emotional theatrics. Everything she says has clarity and purpose. For people who operate on insecurity, projection, and emotional games, this is terrifying. They rely on ambiguity, coded language, and manipulation to maintain control over their environment. When confronted with someone who speaks plainly and refuses to play the game, they feel lost, confused, and threatened. Her words are precise, and her tone is steady, which immediately exposes the chaos around her. In weak circles, communication is often a weapon or a veil. People use it to assert dominance, to manipulate, or to mask incompetence. The Sigma female doesn't need to do any of that. She communicates with intention, and that transparency is disarming. Those who thrive in a fog of misdirection suddenly find themselves exposed. Her clarity forces them to reckon with their own inability to express themselves honestly or navigate life without deception. Because they can't decode her intentions, weak circles project meaning onto her words, twisting them into attacks or accusations. A simple statement of fact becomes condescension. A neutral observation becomes judgment. An honest opinion becomes hostility. Her communication threatens the very structure of their fragile hierarchy because it bypasses their emotional filters entirely. They can't manipulate her through confusion, exaggeration, or rumor, and that loss of control terrifies them. Ironically, her ability to communicate clearly is also her most powerful tool. It allows her to navigate complex social situations without being ensnared in drama, to assert boundaries without aggression, and to see the truth of situations where others remain blind. Weak circles react not to her words, but to their own fear of being exposed by them. Her clarity is not arrogance, aggression, or attack. It's simply the truth delivered without compromise. And in a group built on insecurity and deception, delivering truth without compromise makes her the inevitable scapegoat. Number 10. She refuses the social currency of victimhood. In weak circles, victimhood is often the most valuable currency. People use it to gain attention, sympathy, and influence. Complaints, dramatized struggles, and exaggerated hardships become tools to control the narrative and manipulate the group. The Sigma female, however, refuses to participate in this economy. She doesn't trade in suffering for status. She doesn't weaponize hardship, and she doesn't rely on guilt or pity to get her way. She faces challenges privately, solves problems quietly, and moves forward without seeking validation. To a group dependent on victimhood for relevance and control, her refusal is infuriating. Her independence from this social currency exposes the weakness of those around her. When others rely on dramatized hardship to assert themselves, she calmly continues without reacting. Her self-sufficiency shines a light on the manipulative patterns of the group. People who use victimhood to manipulate feel embarrassed, exposed, and powerless because she won't give them the leverage they depend on. They can't coerce her into playing the game, so they invent reasons to blame her, turning her strength into a liability in their eyes. Instead of seeing her resilience as admirable, weak circles often label her cold, unsympathetic, or unfeeling. They confuse her independence with arrogance and interpret her refusal to participate in their emotional games as a personal affront. By refusing to use suffering as a tool, she disrupts the balance of power in the group. In a space where empathy is conditional and manipulation is rewarded, someone who operates from genuine self-reliance becomes a threat. Ironically, the very quality that makes her a scapegoat is the one that ensures her freedom. Her refusal to exploit emotions for gain preserves her integrity and protects her from the drama that entangles others. Weak circles fear what they cannot control, and her immunity to their social currency forces them to cast blame to preserve their fragile sense of dominance. Her independence isn't cruelty, it's clarity, and in a group built on manufactured vulnerability, clarity is intolerable. By refusing to trade in victimhood, she destabilizes weak circles, and that is why she becomes the target of their resentment. Number 11. She's punished for having a perspective that isn't collective-approved. Sigma females think for themselves, and in weak circles, independent thought is a threat. Most insecure groups operate on conformity disguised as agreement. There's an unspoken rule. Everyone must nod, everyone must follow the same thought patterns, and everyone must validate the group's pre-approved ideas. The moment someone deviates, questions, or simply sees things differently, the fragile structure of the circle trembles. The Sigma female doesn't adjust her perspective to fit the group. She evaluates, reasons, and acts according to her own understanding. That alone makes her a target. Her independent perspective exposes the group's intellectual and emotional limitations. People who are used to unquestioned approval suddenly find their opinions challenged, not through aggression, but by someone quietly refusing to comply with their collective narrative. Her viewpoints highlight inconsistencies, hypocrisies, and gaps in logic that others have been conveniently ignoring. This doesn't make her confrontational, it makes her a mirror. Weak circles cannot tolerate mirrors because mirrors force reflection, and reflection reveals incompetence and fear. Instead of engaging with her ideas, weak groups often punish her for them. She becomes labeled as difficult, argumentative, or rebellious, simply because she refuses to conform. They interpret her independent thinking as a personal attack, as if questioning their collective assumptions is a threat to their very existence. By scapegoating her, they protect their fragile group identity while pretending the problem lies with her instead of within themselves. Ironically, her punishment is a testament to her power. By holding her own perspective firmly, she maintains clarity and authenticity that the group cannot replicate. While others are trapped in the echo chamber of collective approval, she sees the world as it is, unfiltered and uncompromised. Her ability to think differently is not a flaw, it's a strength. The Sigma female doesn't seek to dominate the conversation or impose her views. She simply refuses to abandon her reasoning for the sake of approval. Weak circles react predictably. They attack her because her perspective threatens their comfort with conformity, and that is why she becomes the scapegoat, punished for the very quality that makes her extraordinary. Number 12. Her standards quietly expose their lack of standards. Sigma females hold themselves to a level of integrity, discipline, and personal expectation that weak circles simply cannot comprehend. They have standards, high, unshakable, non-negotiable standards, and they live by them quietly, without showing off or demanding attention. This alone makes others uncomfortable because it exposes a truth most people would rather ignore: their own mediocrity. In groups built on excuses, compromises, and low expectations, her consistency shines like a spotlight, revealing how far behind everyone else really is. She doesn't enforce her standards on anyone, she doesn't lecture, and she doesn't demand others change to match her. She simply refuses to lower herself to meet theirs. She chooses her associations carefully, prioritizes her time, and avoids tolerating nonsense that others accept out of habit or fear. In doing so, she forces weak circles to confront their own lack of discipline, laziness, and unwillingness to take responsibility. And because most people aren't capable of facing that reflection, they find it easier to attack her rather than improve themselves. Her standards are often misconstrued as arrogance or judgment. The truth is far simpler. She values her time, energy, and principles too much to compromise for people who aren't willing to meet her halfway. This clarity, this unwavering self-respect, makes her a target in groups where mediocrity is the comfort zone. Weak circles fear comparison because it reminds them of their own limitations, and the easiest way to cope with that fear is to scapegoat the one who unknowingly highlights it. Ironically, her standards are also what make her extraordinary. They attract opportunities, respect, and meaningful connections that those clinging to mediocrity will never experience. Her presence is a quiet challenge, a reminder that excellence exists without aggression or noise. The more she lives by her principles, the more the weak circle feels threatened. Her standards aren't the problem, they're the proof of her strength. And for weak circles, that proof is intolerable, making her the inevitable scapegoat. In the end, the Sigma female is not the problem in weak circles. She is the mirror, the reality check, and the silent force that exposes every insecurity, every compromise, and every unspoken fear. Her independence, emotional discipline, clarity, and standards threaten the very foundation of groups that rely on mediocrity, manipulation, and conformity to survive. She doesn't argue, she doesn't seek approval, and she doesn't participate in the games that keep the weak comfortable. And that is precisely why she becomes the scapegoat. It's never about her actions. It's always about the fragility of those who can't rise to her level, can't handle the truth she reflects, and can't escape the discomfort her presence creates. What makes her extraordinary is the very reason she is misunderstood, attacked, and labeled difficult. While weak circles scramble to maintain illusions and protect fragile egos, she moves forward with quiet confidence, unwavering standards, and uncompromising clarity. Her life is her own, and she refuses to shrink or apologize to make others feel safe. That is the ultimate power, and it's a power that weak circles will never forgive, because they live in a world that punishes authenticity and rewards compliance. The Sigma female doesn't need their validation, their approval, or their acceptance. She thrives despite their disapproval, and her calm, measured presence is a constant reminder that integrity, independence, and self-respect cannot be contained by fear or gossip. So, if you've ever wondered why certain individuals always become the target in weak social groups, it's not coincidence, it's inevitability. The Sigma female exposes what others refuse to see, refuses to compromise, and refuses to play by rules designed to protect weakness. And that is exactly why she will always stand out, always challenge the status quo, and always be misjudged by those who can't match her strength. If this resonates with you, don't just walk away. Show your support. Subscribe to the channel for more deep insights. Like this video to let us know you value truth over illusion. Comment your thoughts to share your experiences, and share this with anyone who needs to understand the power and inevitability of the Sigma female in weak circles. This isn't just a lesson, it's a revelation, and it's time the world sees it.